This is my 5-minute review of You Are Not a Before Picture by Alex Light. Firstly, I thought the title of this book was genius. I saw it as a daily deal on Audible and was still thinking about the title of the book a few days later, and that's when I decided to go and get it. What is the premise of the book? Well, the author has worked in the fashion industry, and she has been in the trenches with what images are associated with what she describes as diet culture. Can't disagree with a lot of that, but I think it's important to recognise that if you're working in this environment and that's all you see day in, day out, your view on what society sees as beautiful and how toxic all of this is going to be much more exaggerated than somebody who's just dipping in and out of the fashion industry on their coffee break at work. The book feels like a bit of a hate letter to diet culture, and I'm not critical of that. There is an awful lot of very valid criticisms through this book, particularly for women who've been harmed by years and years of diet culture. And that's a lot of it. Women historically have been judged and validated based on their appearance, and it's still going on today. She goes into depth on the history of this and is very much central to the world of Instagram, and probably assumes that the reader is as well. If you're not, some of it may be a bit lost on you. I don't feel like I'm probably the intended audience for this book. She's a bit younger than me, and to be fair, her writing style grated on me, probably because I was listening to it and she would say, "I know, right?" quite a lot, and that got really annoying. But I don't want that to detract from what was valuable about this book. She points out the futility of chasing an ideal in terms of your body type and losing literally decades and sometimes really impacting on your health to chase a trend which, guess what, is going to move on anyway. Can't argue with that. It always saddens me when someone has gone to great lengths to try and look a certain way only for it to move on and they are left looking a bit ridiculous 5 years later. As a counter to this, she advocates very strongly for body confidence, which again I'm in favour of. But where I think I struggled a little bit more was the chapter on health not being affected by weight. This is due to my own worldview coming from the healthcare industry, where I think particularly in the second half of life, it gets much harder to say that you won't suffer consequences of being too fat for a long period of time. The author has clearly had some very negative experiences at the hands of healthcare professionals, and I'm sad to hear this because there really isn't any justification for weight stigma in the healthcare profession. It does limit some things that we can do, but it doesn't sound to me as though any of those things were applicable in her case. She attempts to make the case that you can't separate weight and health, and I write type 2 diabetes on a hell of a lot of death certificates, so my view on this is quite different, and I haven't really shifted on that based on what she's said. She talks a lot about her own eating disorder that's come as a consequence of diet culture, and more importantly her journey to recovery from that, which like all recovery journeys is still in progress. And there's lots of really positive things in there if you've been pulled into yo-yo dieting and suffered at the hands of that. She has clearly found peace with her shape and size and has found a way of moving that works for her that isn't tied to looking like the instructor of a particular class, and I love that. That very much fits with my messaging. Overall, this book definitely has got more positives than negatives for me. I found it really valuable. I found it challenging in some parts, but that's not a bad thing. I haven't fundamentally shifted my view on metabolic ill health. I wasn't expecting to, but you might find this quite supportive. But my overall advice would be to perhaps read it rather than listen to it if you're not of a generation that talks like that.